Now we start to get a little bit more wrist involvement. We start to see that trail elbow start to fold a little bit. And feel how coiled and wound up you are right here.
All right, mate, so let's talk about the takeaway, specifically for a player. As a reference, the distance between the end of the grip and the belt line would see that the hands would start to move and separate away.
Correct.
Now, a lot of players are trying to do this. They might be under the perception of a one-piece takeaway, right? Or trying to keep the elbows close together.
Yep.
We usually see it coupled with too much tension.
Yep.
And essentially what happens is the distance between the end of the handle and the body tends to move in such a position where it's very challenging to create a functional sequence and relationship between the body, the arms, and the club, which, as we see with the professional golfer, they tend to make a big body turn, a relatively short arm swing, meaning that the hands don't travel too far behind the rotation of themselves, which makes it easy to get the club back in front and create that quality impact that you see with the best players, right?
Absolutely.
So I want you to talk to me about the relationship between the end of the handle and the body, and a drill or an exercise that we can use and players can use at home to create a little bit more of a consistent relationship in this first part.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan in that first part, like you alluded to already, of not letting the hands and the club sort of separate too far away from the body. A big thing I see from amateur golfers here is the hands moving away and then that club head moving behind the player really quickly here. And when that happens, we know that they're going to end up having to lift that club head back over, and then that creates that over the top later on. So I love to see, as you just talked about, that relationship from the handle to that belt line staying consistent. And we don't see enough players that I found getting enough of that early movement of the lower body, sort of getting everything going. Now there is a sequence there where, you know, we want the hands to kind of take the club away and the arms, and then the lower body to start moving. But I think if we incentivize that whole piece to start moving a little bit sooner, then we can keep that relationship between the butt end of the club and the belt line intact. So one of the drills that I've always come back to that I found super successful with a bunch of my players is I'll tell them, hey, let's take the butt end of that club and we're going to place that just above the belt, kind of right below the belly button right there. Yep. And then you're going to just, extend your arms. You want these, to be nice and loose. You don't want to be super rigid. And then in the first, let's call it 2.5, 3 feet of that takeaway, we want the butt end of the club to stay positioned right where we had it at address. So as you can see there, go ahead and start over for me. If you just use your arms and hands, we can see clearly that now the butt end of that club is out here. The club head's back behind your body, and typically we don't see a whole lot of lower body rotation. We can see that your legs really haven't moved a whole lot.
Yeah.
Now from here, again, you're going to end up lifting, your arms are going to collapse, and we get into a position that's not that ideal.
Real powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, really strong top of backswing position. So if we can keep that connection right there, that little axis point that you're kind of rotating around, and then we don't have to keep it like, I don't need the player to keep going to like here.
Yeah.
Right? That's no good either.
Yeah.
But if we can come back to like right in there, and then I love from now we start to get a little bit more wrist involvement. We start to see that trail elbow start to fold a little bit. And feel how coiled and wound up you are right here.
Yeah.
You probably sense that you don't really need your arms or hands to travel that much further in the backswing for you to be able to hit a powerful shot anyway.
Yeah. I would say without a doubt, probably one of the most common errors that I see recreational golfers make, and it doesn't matter if it's done through the head moving away quickly, the hands lifting, is just essentially that the upper body and the lower body, they are not in a harmony which we would see with the pro, right? So what that means is that there is too much independent movement of these pieces, be it pulling away. And the thing I really like about this drill is that even though it seems very, very simple, is the fact that when I do this and I put this into my body, just intuitively, straight away, I am going to use my lower body to try and move the club because I've got this beautiful feedback here, this kinesthetic feel of knowing that this has got to stay intact. And as soon as I go like that, well, I'm out. As soon as I go like that, I'm out.
Yep.
So the relationship between the end of the golf club and we can see that sort of belt line as we were talking about is staying very consistent, and I have to. And like Keith was saying, I think if we just take this back, I would probably say let's say about halfway before that sort of 90-degree angle that you would see by the takeaway, because any further you tend to kind of feel, for me, that I'm moving around a little bit too much like that, and that doesn't feel great. So I just say for the first couple of feet, if the golf club is pointing a couple of feet behind the golf ball, that's enough to just feel that lower body get a little bit more engaged. And I'm really feeling like this beautiful sensation of the trail leg extending, the kind of trail hip moving back, my chest and everything rotating, and it does feel very coiled.
Right. And I'm sure too, and I can when I'm watching you do that, when you are keeping the butt end of that club connected to your body, I see that pressure moving into that trail foot almost naturally. And that's what I like a lot about certain drills that encourage 2 or 3 other dominoes to fall over, versus me saying, hey, let's get some pressure moving into that trail heel. Let's get you turning. Let's keep those hands out in front of you. That's a lot for the golfer to try to conceptualize in a 3 feet takeaway. So if I could just get that player to keep that butt end of the club here, as I turn, I can feel that pressure shift into my trail heel. I'm getting that rotation, and naturally, look, that club head staying out in front of my hands just the way we'd want it to be in the early takeaway. Now from here, finish off my turn, and now I can keep that club down in front of me, not get stuck, but also I've made a nice turn in the takeaway.
Yeah, and I think we were talking before we started doing videos today about you've recently moved here into Arizona and you're enjoying the year-long weather, but a lot of players aren't blessed with that. They're not going to be stuck inside. And when we are setting up with a lot of players, when players are working on their swing, they're having little drills like this in the winter months to be able to kind of groove exactly where they should feel like they need to be, but they're very tangible outcomes to the drills, which I love. So it's hard to get this wrong, to be honest.
That's a great point. So as long as the butt end of that club stays, you know you're doing it well.
Yeah.
It's not, we don't have to have this perfect, intricate, everything to be right where it needs to be. The golf swing's always changing. It's never the same from swing to swing anyway. But if we could keep the butt end of that club in the body and turn, you're getting a lot of good things to happen. And you're going to build that habit for later on when you maybe come out of that winter hibernation, you get to play some spring golf, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, I get the sense for that early turn, and my takeaway is looking a lot better, and it's not an overly technical drill, which is, I'm always a big fan of that.
And I think the real benefit of this is like those players that are spent or that have spent so much time inside, and they start eating so much and their belly gets bigger and bigger and bigger, then they realize, well, that golf club, that hit that pretty early. Maybe I should go to the gym and lose a little bit of weight as well.
Yeah, so there's that added benefit as well. I didn't think about that. I'm glad you brought that up, though.
All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to do set up position as we would as if we were going to strike a normal shot. I'm going to pull this up into my belly button. Arms are nice and soft. From here, I'm going to feel a nice lower body shifting, rotation with the upper body, staying in contact. Now, love this, that I can just simply put it straight back into my hands, recreate that same feel. See if you can kind of get that visual just in that first little step. Just put it all together and chip one down there.
We'll see it.
Nice, mate. Feel real connected from the start. Love it.
Pretty pure.